Well, it started by Tim Soder and myself.
We started back in 1994, hauled off to Arizona and moved into a house, and I met this guy next door.
And we hit it off as neighbors and pals. And
19 months after we moved out there.
And then they had to move back to Tennessee. He got transferred back.
And I was a little frustrated with the way things were going, and Bruce came in for a meeting in St. Louis and drove down to see us on a weekend.
And we were out to dinner one night, and I told him I was unhappy with what I was doing, and he said he was unhappy doing what he was doing, and we sort of said, well, maybe we should do something together.
We sat down and he started telling me about this business opportunity he was looking at.
And at that time he said, I've got a person that we used to do business with when I was with another company that has a product that I think would be a really good one for us to start a business around. So he called the guy and told him what we were planning on doing. That was a gentleman named Jim Prince from Pawleys Island Hammock Company. Jim said, you know what, I'm interested. He said, I like the idea of a new company being primarily focused on my product, and we're making the hammock stands ourselves right now. And frankly, we're not very good at it. We're good at weaving hammocks, not making stands.
So we put a business plan together, we did our costing, and we priced out the product. And the way it worked, Bruce was in Arizona and I was in Tennessee.
And we sent Jim a quote, and I think it was about 2 hours later, Tim got a phone call from the local Office Depot.
Calls me and says, Mr. Soder, you have a fax here. I said, no, I sent a fax from there. He says, no, Mr. Soder, we've received a fax from you. I said, no, I sent a fax from there this morning. He says, no, you don't understand me. We have received a fax and it is addressed to you.
Keep in mind, I sent this fax from Arizona. 2 hours later, Tim got a phone call that he had a fax down at the Office Depot, and he went down there and got it. It was a purchase order. We did not have a building. We did not have one piece of equipment. We didn't have a business license. We had nothing. We had a name and we had a purchase order.
I go home. I didn't have a cell phone at the time. Almost nobody had a cell phone. I go home and I walk in the door and tell my wife, I just picked up an order for 10,200 hammock stands. We were going to make hammock stands for the largest rope hammock manufacturer in the United States. As soon as that conversation was over with, I called Bruce and I said, Bruce, pack your car and head to Tennessee. We're going into business.
And we rented a small industrial building. It was too small for what we were doing, but we did it anyway. We started with 4 pieces of equipment, a small little building, and got an order of steel and made hammock stands. And that's kind of how it started. Because in the process of making hammock stands, the big invention was Tim coming up with the idea to reduce the end of a piece of square tubing so that it could sleeve inside of itself, so we could make hammock stands less expensive and get more units onto a truck, because they were previously all made with round tubing and the boxes were too big. And so he had a tool and die maker make us a special tool so we could reduce the end of it, and it worked. And we redesigned the hammock stand the way it was made and started making it a new way, more on a truck. So one day Tim comes into my office and says, you got to come out and see this. And it was the, oh wow moment. It was like, holy crap, we can build sheds. We can build garages. We can build houses. We decided, we went from there to there, in 30 seconds we were going to be the next big thing in home building.
Well, about 3 years into this, our business is doing fairly well.
The guy who owned the hammock company came to Tim and I one day.
We decided to go for an afternoon of golf, and as we're pulling into the golf course, he says, I got something I need to tell you guys.
Look, we're going to sell the company.
What does that mean for us? Well, it means if one company buys it, you're golden.
If we sell it to the other guy, they make their own stands and you won't be doing any more stand business.
Well, you can imagine which one bought the company.
Well, long story short, they sold to the bad guy. And we lost 40% of our business overnight.
So we started looking at ways we could use this technology, the equipment that we developed. We started figuring out what we could do with that technology. And we hit on, initially, a carport product, a shelter, roof-only shelter product.
That was survival. That was the main reason, and it was a tough 2 or 3 years at that point.
But what we did when we got into the carport business per se, we realized quickly that there's several guys out there who are trying to do this, and we need to be something different. And rather quickly determined that we could turn this basic frame, that we could do better than anybody else. It didn't need to just be a carport.
So in 2 years' time, we completely transitioned the company into what we were. At that point, we became VersaTube Building Systems, and everything else in our company that you see on our website is an evolution of that point, right? It started basically as a carport or a shed, became a carport, became a garage, became a larger building, became a horse barn, became lean-tos, and all the other things you see on our website that are available evolved out of that time, much of which has come from input from dealers, from customers, from our own staff. It's a complete evolution. So that's kind of how VersaTube came to be.